Okay, hello everyone. My name is Lisa Grant and I am a careers consultant with Queen Mary, specifically for the School of Economics and Finance, which we tend to abbreviate to CEF, just to make it a little bit less wordy. So it's a really great opportunity for me today to talk to you about the offering that we have for students, both undergraduate and postgraduate, in relation to their careers. So kind of every stage, deciding what you want to do, investigating opportunities, working out how to apply for them, and then hopefully securing them. And actually, we also stay available to you for 3 years after you graduate. So hopefully really positive service for you. So I'm just going to show you the team, first of all, so that you know we're actually real people and we're very nice people. And I'll come back and talk about this a little bit later on again, just to remind you what we can do for you. So there's 4 dedicated careers professionals in CEF. So obviously that's my picture there. So I'm a careers consultant just for CEF students, which can be any part of the process, from helping you come to a decision, interview practice, looking at your CV, absolutely everything. And then Alyssa in the middle is my colleague, and she only looks at CVs and applications. And I'll talk about in a minute why that's really important, but particularly people who are interested in finance degrees, and I know not everyone will look at finance, but a large proportion of economics students will. There's very specific criteria for finance roles, and Alyssa will be able to help you look at your CVs, make sure visually they meet the criteria, but also help you really focus what you've done to what the employer's looking for. So absolutely invaluable. And then Aminal is an employer engagement and placements officer. So we have a number of schemes just for CEF students that are really fantastic opportunities for you to get work experience. So internships, micro internships, consultancy projects, which I'll talk about a bit later on. And Aminal is dedicated to CEF students, UG and PG. And then lastly, my colleague Emanuela is industrial experience and study abroad. So those of you that are looking for international placements or industrial placements in the UK, she's the person to help you with that. So somebody's asked a question about an academic career or a private industry career. Generally in careers, we're not advisors on further study as such. So if you wanted to do a PhD, that's not our area of expertise. Certainly private industry career is very much us. But once you're in the department, they will very much give you the guidance if it's an academic route that you want to go down. So in terms of where our students start off thinking that they want to go, of course, for economics, a lot of people think about the finance industry. And that's quite natural if you're doing a degree that focuses on a finance element. So I've sort of highlighted some of them here, with obviously finance sector in the middle. 2 types of banking, very attractive to our students. So investment banking and retail banking. So retail banking, more the high street type brands that would be familiar in the UK, for example. We would have HSBC and Royal Bank of Scotland, for example. Insurance is a huge sector, really well represented in the City of London. Not necessarily one that students realise at the beginning will offer them a wealth of opportunities, but really does huge position in the city and some very interesting roles there. It's not all about insuring your car or your house. Some really fantastic opportunities in terms of worldwide disaster insurance and risk mitigation and those things. So quite a lot of jobs for financial modeling, quite a lot of jobs for sales, really interesting opportunities there. And a lot of our students get opportunities to do a little bit of some sort of taster in insurance to start to understand the opportunities that are really there. So fintech is something that more recently has been much more in our students' eye line. So this is basically technology to the financial sector. Very lucrative for certain companies. Not all companies are successful in the fintech market, but they're regarded as very agile businesses. So if you've got that sort of agile financial mindset, there's a lot of opportunities in those sectors. And then accountancy, I'll show you in a minute. Accountancy is very popular with our students. I'll show you shortly the number of our students that go into accountancy firms. And frankly, if you get a qualification from one of the big insurance companies, it really does open doors for pretty much the rest of your life, frankly. And similarly, consultancy. So the big companies, the big consultants, fantastic programs that they offer. So this is a slide of where Queen Mary students have ended up recently. So I just did a snapshot of LinkedIn. This is CEF students so I just did it yesterday, where they are. And you'll see that big accountancy firms account for a lot of CEF students, and they're really fantastic places to get a position for those that are able to. So you can see Deloitte and EY coming in at number 1 and 2, Accenture 4, and PwC 5. So really big, the big 4 coming in there. And then the Department for Business is number 6. I'll talk about not-for-profit and public sector in a minute. Goldman Sachs, one that everyone is keen to join, very, very competitive to get into. But we have got alumni who are there. Barclays, as I said, high street banks, popular with our students because they run very positive schemes. And Barclays, and in fact, most of the big banks are really keen on widening participation. So running a lot of schemes to encourage diversity in different forms, which is very positive for the student body. And finally, JP Morgan. So these are the top names where our students are on LinkedIn. But there's many, many others. We have a fantastic alumni network, which is really positive. And then I just briefly talked about not-for-profit and public sector. And I'll just show you a similar graphic for that. So civil service, and I just mentioned one of the departments, the Department for Industry. Very popular because they have a civil service fast track scheme, which is fantastic for graduates if you can get on it. But even if not, their other schemes are really, really positive. Not surprisingly for economics graduates, the Treasury and the Bank of England, very popular, but also think tanks and charities where they're looking for people with a financial focus or an economic focus. Really a huge support in their areas. So you're certainly not limited to finance, albeit not surprisingly, a lot of economics undergraduates and postgraduates start their courses at least thinking that they're interested in finance. So you've probably heard about graduate schemes. I just want to touch on them very briefly. So there are graduate schemes run by big organisations, particularly banks, consultancies, advertising, PR, and also the civil service. And they're fantastic if you can get on them because it's generally a 2-year program where you get moved around the business and you see loads of different areas. So if you're very able, but you're not quite sure what you want to do, it's a fantastic introduction to that environment, but not surprisingly, incredibly competitive to get into. So really only about 10% of graduates get onto the graduate schemes. So don't be disheartened if you're not one of them. There's still fantastic routes into the best companies. I hate to see people get disheartened if they don't get on these schemes, because sometimes I think companies brand them as if it's the be all and end all, but there are many, many other ways into these companies. So don't let that be disheartening. And I just want to talk to you about other companies that finance and economics graduates go to, because these companies have big finance departments and they also run fantastic schemes for graduates and postgraduates. Because obviously they want to be running their finance departments in the most efficient way. Another one that I know runs a really good scheme is Vodafone, which our students are very interested in as well. And just to clarify what I was just saying, so everyone focuses on investment banks and the huge businesses, but those businesses don't suit everyone. So a very large percentages of businesses in the UK are SMEs, so small and medium-sized enterprises. So around half of our graduates do go to work for companies with more than 500 employees, that should be. But also half actually work for companies with fewer than 500. So it's roughly split. And actually smaller companies can give you more opportunity because it's quite agile. So you get to do lots of different things. So we really encourage people to think as wide as possible, what's going to suit them rather than what their expectation is. And then this last point, 40% of jobs in the UK are not advertised. So they might turn up on LinkedIn, or it might be word of mouth. And we really help you try and work out the best way to network yourself, whether it's using LinkedIn or contacts that you might have in the industry, because we recognise that personal connection is a big part of how successful you're likely to be. So we also run workshops, which I'll talk about in a second, to help you with things like CVs and cover letters, but also LinkedIn and things like interviewing and also confidence, how to be more confident. This is how lots of people start university with their career thinking, and this is absolutely normal. So I really want to get across to you that although the some of the slides about how graduate recruitment schemes go can be a little bit dry, we really understand that everyone is individual, and we all kind of look at other people and think they're much better sorted than we are. But in fact, it's quite difficult to get your ideas in order. We actually see quite a lot of people really close to graduating who still have no idea what they want to do. So if either your friends at school or your friends at uni already told you they knew exactly what they wanted to do, that's fine, but you don't have to be in the same place as that. And also, just to try and reassure you a bit as well, we find that quite often graduates change job 2 or 3 times in the first few years anyway. So you don't have to get it absolutely right first time, but we really want to help you try and find ways to find what's right for you, and refinance this, refine this thinking a little bit. So let's talk about what we can do to help you. So we offer one-to-one guidance appointments. And that's basically where I or one of my colleagues will sit down with you and at any stage of your career's journey, talk about either where you are, what your aspirations are, look at your CV, look at your application, or maybe help you try and identify different routes into the industry that you're interested in. And this is available to you, as I said, up to 3 years after you graduate. So even if you get into that first role and it's not right for you, you can come back to us and we can have another chat and see what it is that you need to tweak in what you've got. And then CV and application checks, as I said, the CVs in this country, if you're an international student, tend to be very different from the ones overseas. So it's partly us familiarising you with what the expectation is in the London market, if that's what you're interested in. That's not for everyone, of course. And also helping you really sell yourself. I think naturally, we all tend to be a little bit reticent about singing our own praises or saying how good we are. And what we can help you do with your CV is just try and focus it so that you're really targeting what's important to the employer you're looking at. And then the last thing is we will run mock interviews for you. So if you get to through to an interview with a company you really want to work for, let's say it's Deloitte, then I can interview you as if I'm Deloitte in advance. I'll look at the sort of questions they ask and hopefully set you up so that when you actually have the interview, you're much better placed. And just going back to talking about people not really knowing what they want to do. So these titles are some of the jobs from last year's economics graduates. So these are some of the titles of jobs that they were doing. And I think some of them, you know, you would expect financial analyst, corporate banking, trainee broker. And then there's a couple that you may be less familiar with. So pension actuary is running the numbers to make sure that there's enough money in pensions. Sports odds researcher is researching the figures for betting companies. And leveraged finance is undertaking the finance with very small amount of initial finance from the company, but huge amounts from the banks. So very different roles that perhaps even at the beginning of their careers, they may not have realised actually existed. So, sorry, I'm having a bit of trouble with my mouse. Let's see if that's going to move on. Oh yeah, good. So I'm just going to split this out a little bit into undergrads and postgrads. So a lot of stuff we do is available to everyone, but some of it is more focused for your cohort. So for undergraduates, we embed modules in your degree. So in year one, we're much more about looking at CVs, trying to work out how you're going to present yourself to the market, and helping you look at things like psychometric tests, which are part of big recruitment schemes. And then in year two, we do a really fantastic mock assessment centre where we send you for half a day and you'll do things like presentation, group work, one-to-one interview. And it's a really fantastic experience because a lot of companies are using exactly the same. So really positive. And then in year three, we're much more about practicing interviews and building confidence. So really good program over 3 years, which the students really engage with. And then for postgrads, slightly different focus. So we run dedicated workshops aimed specifically at postgraduates, which will be CVs, applications and interviews, where we really pick out the elements that are important for somebody to be marketing themselves at that stage. For international students, we also run international student weeks, where we help with things like how to network in the UK. We invite people to help you with things like visas. We're not visa experts, but people will come in and help. And we also run mock assessment centres, especially for you. So to really help you try and think how to get yourself that critical job. And then the things that we do for everyone. So CEF has internships and placements that are only for CEF students. So the really positive thing about that is that it's a much smaller pool of people than if it were either the whole university or lots of other undergraduates and postgraduates in London, just for CEF students. And also we give really tailored feedback to every individual about how their application was received. And they're with real companies and they help us give feedback. So you can really get a flavour of working in a particular industry with less competition, as it were. So employer and alumni events, we run lots of different events for you to get a feel for industries. So it might be investment banking, it might be civil service, human resources. So we really cover a huge range of industries. Sometimes we get alumni in, sometimes we get recruiters themselves in to tell us specifically what a day is like in that industry and who they're looking for. And then we have a newsletter which goes out to the whole of CEF fortnightly, and it updates with the most important opportunities for CEF students. So instead of you having to trawl through every opportunity, my colleague Alyssa does it for you and then presents it in a way that makes it much more accessible for you. So less legwork for you, and you can really see the opportunities. And then Queen Mary has its own job site, and on the job site, there's usually around 1,000 jobs. And like all job sites, you can refine it by your particular area of interest, where you want to locate, say it's London or wherever. So really, really fantastic resource. And some employers are giving us opportunities instead of giving them to other universities or before other universities, so really positive. And then the last thing that we do, which is really well received by CEF students, is we run photo shoots so that you get a really professional picture on your LinkedIn profile. Did one last week actually, and had sort of 55 or so people have their picture taken, just so that when they're presenting themselves on LinkedIn, they already look professional. And then there's also practical tools. So we have a lot of online resources. So a lot of companies are going down the route of using, like filtering people very early with online tools. So we have a CV builder online. We have psychometric testing you can use. We have AI video interviewing. So, I mean, none of us like it, but basically where you're being interviewed and there's no person on the other side, it's just a screen. It's a horrible process, but if that's what companies are going to do, then we have to prepare you for that as well. And we record lots of workshops about LinkedIn and CVs and cover letters and that sort of thing. And then lots of people worry about their CV and has it got enough on there. So things like work experience, business startups, understanding industries, paid roles and courses. And these are all things that at Queen Mary, we're offering our CEF students specifically. So let me just briefly talk about them. I don't want to overwhelm you with information, but just so that you can have a quick look. So I'll talk about these, a couple of these main ones first. So Forage is where you can get online experience of working for companies, which was not surprisingly particularly popular in the pandemic. And then the micro internship and student consultancy programs are actually where you'll go and work for a company for a short space of time, usually on a specific project. Quite often they have, they're sort of like a social inclusion type project, sometimes with charities or social enterprises, sometimes with businesses, and get very specific feedback from business owners and charity bosses about your performance. It's a competitive process, but very, very well regarded by our students, and really fantastic on CVs. And then we actually have our own temp agency called Q Temps, which provides short-term temporary work for students. Again, fantastic on CVs. So this is the consultancy project again, but a shorter version. And then the last thing is Q Taster, which is basically where companies or industries invite students in to understand a little bit about their day-to-day. So it might be insurance, it might be tech, a huge range of industries. And it just really gives you the opportunity to see in real life what a company, what it would be like to be in that industry. Because I think we're well aware that not every industry could possibly be visible to you at this stage. So the more we're able to provide you with opportunities to see it for yourself, the more you get to know whether it's likely to suit you or not. So I'm just going to put the careers team up again, because I've just given you quite a lot of information there. But actually we are a really, really friendly team. And we really want to help you find what you want to do and then help you get into that industry. So I've just talked about some things here that might be relevant. So it's all about your narrative, basically. So it's your story. So for me and the rest of the CEF careers team, what's really important to us is that we find something that you're going to enjoy and find fulfilling. I'm not interested in just getting you into a job for the sake of it. So in terms of designing your narrative, some of the things I've picked out here that we help you with are how to do your homework. So where to look, which websites would be good. How you show up means how your body language comes across, how you're perceived in interviews, things like your cover letter and your CVs, how you are at interview. And then the decision-making criteria. So if there's a couple of industries that you're interested in, we'll help you sit down and think what is really the best one for you. And then do things like actually negotiate, particularly with smaller companies. It might be quite hard to know where to pitch yourself. So we'll help you negotiate with that. So it's a much more personal process than maybe it sounds when we're talking about a lot of big companies recruiting. But the idea is that we're here for you and right up to 3 years after you graduate.
Is there a particular period in the year where economics or finance related careers opportunities or job opportunities are usually advertised, or are they generally advertised throughout the year? Is there a specific period for this sector?
Yes, there is. So if you're interested in the big banks or the big accountancy firms, they start the process very early September through to mid-October for the following year. So they're advertising a year in advance. So if you're starting, if it's a master's and you're starting in September, you'd need to be applying for the following September. And basically the process themselves for those big companies takes several months. There's many stages. So they quite often start with psychometric testing online. There might be online interviewing. If you get through those stages, there's quite often an assessment centre and then a last interview. So that can take several months. But that's for the very biggest companies and the structured graduate schemes. For slightly smaller companies, they're actually advertising all through the year. So even, now we're seeing jobs going on that will start as soon as people graduate this year. So all is definitely not lost if you don't get onto one of those schemes. But if you are interested in that, then you really need to be thinking about it sooner rather than later, that's for sure.
Lovely, thank you. And then within the School of Economics and Finance, we often offer within our undergraduate programs, there are some year in industry options. So just why would you recommend pursuing a year in industry to prospective students?
Yeah, I think, to be honest, it's all about your CV and how you come across to employers. So anything that shows that you're able to manage yourself in the world of work, particularly in a related area, is generally very well received, because you've already sort of understood the requirements of a day-to-day business. It's certainly not essential to do a year in industry, particularly if you can get other things on your CV. But actually, I think people who do it then come back to their studies afterwards and actually say that it starts to take on a new reality for them after they've worked in industry. So yeah, very, very popular, and employers do like it.
Are there any available opportunities to prepare for certain things like psychometric tests through Queen Mary? As we start our programs in September/October, are there any chances to work on CV or career advice through the summer or prior to starting the academic year, given what you just mentioned about the early application period?
Well, so at Queen Mary, we sign up to psychometric test sites, which you can use for free, but I don't think you can use them until you actually start your program. However, there's a couple of companies that we use that do allow you to do a certain amount of free testing. So one is called Graduates First, and one is called Job Test Prep. And they allow you to do, I think, something like 5 without actually paying for it. And most of the companies that you might go for, so big companies, also let you practice 1 or 2 of their tests online. So you might have to do a little bit of sort of searching around, but they are out there. And then in terms of CVs and cover letters, if you look on LinkedIn, there's some really, really good advice on there about how to perfect your CV and cover letter, including some really good question and answers about what you should include and how to present it.
Lovely. And I would just add that they can obviously, as soon as they start with us, start making use of the careers service card. They can get straight in touch, and so if they come prepared with a CV that they have developed that they want you to have a look at before they submit any applications, then that the careers service is here and ready for you to interact with.
Yeah.
Lovely. Okay, so I wondered if you could give a bit of information about how long students can access the career support after they've finished their studies.
Yeah, so it's out to 3 years afterwards. The reason for that is that we find that quite often around the 2-year mark, people are ready to make a change, not necessarily because they've made a mistake, but often they can see that they'd like to move in a slightly different direction. So the first job quite often opens people's eyes to what's out there. And then the second job is more pursuing what they realise they really want to do. So it's generally not certainly not a failure. It's generally a slight change of direction or building towards the next, the first level of promotion sort of thing. And so we're available for 3 years. So you can come back to us and have access to all the same things that you had before, particularly things like mock interviews, and also sort of discussions about, what is the best path now, bearing in mind what you now know about the world of work. So yeah, definitely 3 years we're here for.
Lovely. And then for our international audiences, just whether or not there is a support offered to support them with their graduate route visa application.
There is, but it's actually not in the careers department. It's offered separately through the student welfare department. So support is there, but it's just not us that does it.
Lovely. And then I just wanted to kind of speak about a couple of the activities just as examples that we put on throughout the year. So as Lisa has already mentioned, we've had activities such as the LinkedIn photo shoot, so getting a professional photograph of yourself that works for your CV/LinkedIn profile. But we're also running as part of, whether that's integrated into the curriculum or additional activities, there are alumni and current student panels about activities that they're involved in. So for instance, we do have an alumnus come in to visit our campus and provide a guest lecture to some of our students next week, I believe it is, and they're going to be looking and talking to our students about their experience within Queen Mary and then post graduating. And they're also going to kind of focus on the topic of how financial institutions have responded to the Ukraine crisis. And so there are lots of topical and insightful activities with our alumni and with our current students. And so you will get access to those activities as students with us. So there's lots of different things like that. And they're just a couple of examples of things that have happened recently or about to happen. And this is kind of year-round activities, and there will be a mix of in-person activities and online activities as well. We just wanted to thank you for joining us today. We hope you have found answers to all of your questions. There's more information about everything that we do within the School of Economics and Finance on our website and on the careers website as well. Thank you all for joining.
Thanks very much, everyone. It's really nice to see everyone, and hopefully we've been able to answer questions, but you know, feel free to follow up afterwards if there's other things that you'd like to know from us. So thanks so much.
Thank you.
Bye.